Hi, it's me Jacqueline. Welcome to my channel. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe my channel and visit my Patreon page, link in the description.
The Awakening. The first step, surrender to the enchantment. McCoy sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clenched into fists. The garments lay in front of him, waiting, their presence heavy in the air. He had read the letter. He knew what would happen if he put them on. And yet, here he was. Kate knelt beside him, placing a hand on his thigh. "You don't have to do this alone," she whispered. Her touch was warm, steady, grounding him in the moment. McCoy swallowed hard. "I don't even know if I can do this." Kate gave him a soft, reassuring smile. "I'll help you." His chest tightened. Her faith in him had never wavered, not when he failed, not when he fell apart. And now, when everything about him was about to change, she was still here, still choosing him. He nodded, and with trembling hands, he reached for the first garment. The sports bra, the first change. The sports bra felt unnaturally smooth in his hands, almost alive, as if it recognized him. He hesitated. Then, with a deep, shuddering breath, he slipped it over his shoulders, pulling it into place. The moment the fabric settled against his chest, a shockwave of heat burst through his body. McCoy gasped, his muscles tensing violently as a foreign sensation bloomed across his chest. A deep pressure built beneath his skin, his pecs tightening, reshaping, shifting into something softer, fuller. His breathing hitched as sensitivity spread through his chest, his skin prickling with unfamiliar awareness. He clutched at his torso, his fingers brushing against the small but undeniable swell of developing breasts. His stomach turned. It was happening. And there was no way to stop it now. The corset, reshaping the core. McCoy was still reeling from the changes in his chest when Kate picked up the corset. "This one has to be tight," she said gently. He swallowed, nodding as he lifted his arms, allowing her to wrap the garment around his torso. The fabric latched onto him like a second skin, clinging to his waist as if it belonged there. Kate began tightening the laces, pulling slowly, firmly. McCoy gasped, his ribs compressing, his stomach sinking inward as his entire frame adjusted. A burning sensation erupted through his waist and hips. It felt like his bones were shifting, grinding into a new shape, molding him into a narrower, more delicate form. Each pull of the corset was agony, his body resisting, then yielding, reshaping against his will. His fingers dug into the sheets, his knuckles white. "Almost there," Kate whispered, her voice both soothing and determined. McCoy could barely breathe. But the moment she tied the last knot, something clicked inside him. A pulse of finality. His waist was no longer his own. He was one step closer to McKayla. The silk panties, no turning back. His entire body throbbed as he reached for the silk panties, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Kate hesitated. "McCoy, are you sure?" His throat was dry, his heart pounding like a war drum. "No," he admitted. "But it doesn't matter anymore." He stood, his body aching under the weight of the transformation. Then, with one final deep breath, he slid the panties up his legs. A scream ripped from his throat. The pain was instant and unbearable, a tearing, twisting sensation deep within him. His core ignited, a fire spreading through his lower body, burning away everything that had once made him male. He collapsed forward, gripping Kate's arms as his hips widened, his pelvis reshaped, his entire center of gravity shifting. McCoy's breath came in sharp, uneven gasps as the last, most painful change unfolded between his legs. Tears blurred his vision. The final piece of himself was gone. Kate held him, her hands rubbing slow, calming circles against his back. And for the first time, he felt small in her arms. The high-performance female undergarments, the final piece. McCoy was still trembling when Kate handed him the final garment, the high-performance female undergarments. The last piece. The one that would complete the transformation. With shaking hands, he pulled it over his legs and up his torso. The moment the fabric touched his skin, a wave of cold fire raced through his limbs. McCoy gasped, his arms and legs locking up as muscle and bone shifted. His shoulders softened, his arms thinned, his legs became long and sculpted, built for agility and grace. His hips settled into place, his entire frame now undeniably feminine. And then, a final pulse of warmth, sealing the transformation into motion. He could feel it. Every hour, every minute, his body would shift further. By morning, there would be no trace of McCoy left. Kate reached for his hands, her eyes glistening with emotion. "You're beautiful," she whispered. McCoy shuddered, his emotions spiraling into something he couldn't define. He wasn't ready for this. But the enchantment had already begun. And there was no way back. The first night, a body not his own. McCoy barely made it to bed before the full exhaustion hit him. The garments held him firm, unyielding, forcing his body to adjust. Every movement was painful, slow, as if the transformation itself was weighing him down. He could barely lift his arms. Could barely breathe without feeling the corset's embrace. Could barely think beyond the growing realization that tomorrow he would wake up even less of himself. Kate lay beside him, brushing soft fingers through his hair, her voice calm, soothing. "I'm here," she whispered. "I won't leave you." McCoy turned his head, meeting her gaze. And for the first time since this started, he felt safe, even as he felt himself slipping away. The breaking point. The longest day of his life. Pain. It was the first thing McCoy felt the moment he stirred, a deep, bone-deep agony that radiated through every inch of his body. His muscles ached as if they had been torn apart and rebuilt overnight. His skin burned, hypersensitive to even the brush of the sheets. But it was his core that sent the sharpest wave of nausea through him. Something was happening down there. Something unstoppable. He sucked in a shaky breath, shifting under the blankets, and froze. A strangled noise caught in his throat. His hips felt wider, fuller. His pelvis had changed again, further accommodating the inevitable reality of his transformation. And between his legs, the final remnants of his masculinity were disappearing, reshaping, resizing, molding into the perfect female form. Tears burned in his eyes as he squeezed his legs together, feeling the emptiness where something had once been. His breathing hitched, his mind unable to fully comprehend the reality that was now irreversible. "It's gone." His hands trembled as they hovered over his stomach, over the space that would never carry a child, never function as a real woman's body would. This was the consequence he paid. No, the consequence Kate had chosen for him. His chest, his breasts, undeniable now. But it wasn't just his lower body. His chest ached, tingled, the weight pressing against the sports bra now heavier, fuller. He swallowed hard, shifting slightly, and gasped. The sensation of movement, of weight, was undeniable. His breasts were fully formed now. Not just a swelling, not just a hint of softness, but real, undeniable, fully developed breasts that moved with every slight breath. His nipples were sensitive, the fabric of the bra brushing against them, sending unwanted shivers up his spine. He turned his head toward the mirror, his heart pounding. The reflection staring back at him was no longer McCoy Harrison. It was someone else. Someone Kate had created. Someone who wasn't finished yet. The clothing reshapes to fit his new body. The corset adjusted, the laces tightening on their own, refining his hourglass shape, sculpting him into the ideal feminine physique. The high-performance undergarments clung to his legs, molding them into sleek, toned perfection, built for speed, agility, and power, the body of a female athlete. Every shift, every stretch, every agonizing breath brought more change. The clothing resized itself, reshaped itself, ensuring that there was no going back, no undoing this transformation. McCoy gritted his teeth. It was too much pain, too much loss, too much of his old self disappearing with every second. Kate's love, his only anchor. The door creaked open. A voice, soft, steady, filled with love. "McCoy?" McCoy squeezed his eyes shut, his body trembling. His voice that was no longer his, came out in a shaky, breathless whisper. "Kate. I can't." She was beside him in an instant, wrapping her arms around him, pressing her forehead to his temple. "I know," she whispered. "I know it hurts." McCoy let out a broken sob, gripping onto her like she was the only thing keeping him from falling apart completely. And maybe she was. Because even as she held him, even knowing she had made this choice for him, there was no anger left. Only her warmth. Only her love. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The final hours. McCoy barely drifted in and out of sleep, the transformation never ceasing, never stopping. His hair now brushed past his shoulders, long and silky, framing the feminine face in the mirror. His arms, his legs, his very form was perfected, the body of an elite female athlete sculpted from his former self. But most importantly, he was almost done. 24 hours. And then McKayla would be born.
Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access.